I don't let my children eat snacks. It's controversial, I know, but it has made them both happier and healthier. I'm going to tell you exactly why, and plus my little disclaimer / how we get into it / exceptions at the end of the video. The first reason why I don't let my children eat snacks is because they need time to digest their food. This is something that growing up, small frequent meals were like, that's what you need to do to be healthy, small frequent meals. I felt awful. Like I was carb-based, I was eating like probably every 2 hours, which is more often than newborn, like premature babies in the NICU eat. I just didn't feel good. I was always constantly thinking about food. I didn't want that for my children. So I do better intermittent fasting where I'm only eating during about an 8-hour or 6-hour window during the day. My children's form of intermittent fasting is that they eat meals at set times every day and then they're done. So we usually eat when they get up at like 6 or 7. And so they eat around 7 and then they eat around noon and then again around 5:30 or 6. By having that structured time, their body has the time to complete the whole digestive process. So they're not in constant state of both secreting bile to digest the fats and secreting insulin to digest the glucose and having the stuff down below that they ate 45 minutes later and having the stuff down even lower in the intestine that they ate before that. There's just a lot of people and kids are having this constant state of digestion. Their body never gets a break from digestion all day long. And there have been studies that show that growth hormone is increased, and growth hormone isn't only important for growth, it's also kind of gives you a general sense of well-being. So growth hormone is increased by a fasting period that's over 12 hours. So if my kids finish dinner at 5:30 and then they're not eating again until 7, they still get that little bump of above 12 hours that they are in that fasting mode, which increases their growth hormone, gives them that sense of well-being, and their body is just fine. Like this is something we'll get into at the end, but you can train your hunger hormones. It's not like, oh, I'm required to eat every 2 hours, but you might be fine intermittent fasting. This is something that we can change. The second reason that I don't let my kids snack is because I want them to be able to attend to activities, and this really helps. I find that whenever we slip into snacking, they are so focused on snacking, and this isn't a parenting issue and this isn't a personality issue for them. This is me working with their own body chemistry. So if their body is accustomed to eating 3 meals a day and that's it, that's what it ends up wanting. And so if we finish breakfast at 7:30, which we often do right now, it's summertime, and then we can go to the park or we can go on a hike or we can go fishing or even on errands all morning without having to stop to snack. And you have no idea until you've done it how precious that is to be able to be engaged in an activity with all 3 children. Like it can be really chaotic with 3 kids. And so once we get engaged and none of them are gonna need to eat until noon, that's just something that's really beneficial to me. It's beneficial to us as a family. And I feel like it helps them thoroughly enjoy hobbies and to stay engaged in an activity without having that constant need for food and having food be their primary like focus. It's almost like a biologically driven thing for kids that are carb burners or kids that are used to eating every 2 hours, is that whenever anything gets hard, whenever anything is boring, whenever anything is stressful, they're just like, oh, well, I could eat, so I'm gonna tell mom I'm hungry, and probably goldfish or pretzels or even apples are a better distraction than sitting with my feelings of frustration or stress or anything like that. So being engaged in activities is another reason why I absolutely love that we don't snack. And then the third, which is definitely not insignificant, is that they eat my meals. And so if you're like me and you spend plenty of time sourcing good food for your children, finding recipes, cooking healthy meals, and then you put them on the table and they're not hungry, it can be so frustrating. It can be disheartening. It can make me feel like I don't really want to cook for you anymore. It can be really frustrating when our kids don't eat. So when you're feeding your kids 3 times a day, and you would think they'd get hangry, which we'll talk about this in a second, they don't. Like they're hungry 20 minutes before their meal, but they're not like hungry for hours before their meal. They're hungry for like when their body expects to be eating and it starts releasing those hormones that it's ready to digest food again. So that they eat their food and they eat what I think they should be eating. Another controversial opinion is that they eat their protein and their fat and their vegetables. And this is something that I think is essential for them. They grow really well. Like my kids have always been like right on track for their height and weight, and height and weight is always like whatever percentile. Like I've got one that's pretty big, so he's always like 80 and 80. And I've got one that's a little bit smaller, so he's like 25 and 25. But my kids have always grown super well. Like I've just been really happy with their growth. Their doctor is really happy with their growth. And I think a big part of this is that they're eating their meals. Like they come and eat a balanced meal, and it's so much easier to put together a balanced meal than trying to put together a little balanced bite of food every 45 minutes, 2 hours, or whatever happens when you're snacking all the time. And another addition to that is it can be a lot easier on your budget, is that we have very little wasted food. Like it's not uncommon that if someone isn't hungry and doesn't finish their plate, someone else comes in and finishes it. And since we're only eating 3 times a day, that's just less time that wasted food can happen. It's more time that I'm willing to dedicate to making those 3 meals because I haven't felt like I was in the kitchen all day. Just eating those 3 solid meals a day has been really beneficial for us. So let's talk about how I transitioned onto this first. So I kind of tend to be a lot more relaxed, a lot more baby-led when my babies are infants. I breastfeed on demand. And that's what I did with all 3 of them. As they weaned, which my kids weaned between like 2 years and 3 years, after they were a year and starting to eat more food, I fed them 3 meals a day. Like often it was just from my plate. I'll link above to my How We Start Solids, but a lot of times they just eat right from my plate. 3 meals a day, because that's what I was eating. And I do eat 3 meals when I'm breastfeeding. I don't intermittent fast as much. So they transitioned onto 3 solid meals a day. So as I'm transitioning them onto food, I limit nursing to nap time and wake up time. And so their nursing sessions kind of go down as their naps go down. And so that's just kind of our gentle weaning. I do, like if a kid's going through a growth spurt or they're sick, I have no problem nursing them more. But I kind of use nursing as their snacks. And so as they wean, all of mine sort of weaned themselves. Like I kind of structured them into it, but it wasn't something that we had to fight about. And so they were kind of okay with not nursing as much. And so as we weaned, that's where the snacks went. And so from weaning, we just went right to 3 meals a day. The only exception for this is like my 10-year-old's a swimmer now. And so when he's going through a growth spurt and he's swimming, I have no problem if he comes and has a 4th meal after swim practice, because I know how it is to be like hungry. And a lot of times we eat our dinners earlier on the days he swims. And so if he's going through a growth spurt and he ate all his dinner, like what I don't like to fall into the habit of is them picking at their food and hoping that something better is coming. No, that doesn't happen. So if he ate all his dinner and he's hungry and he wants to go grab leftovers from the fridge or have eggs or have something else that's kind of meal-like even apple and peanut butter, I think is fine. I have no problem with that. If my kids do, like I said, if they're eating all of their meals and they are still hungry, like maybe I didn't make enough dinner or I didn't make enough lunch and they're still hungry like an hour later, I will feed them as long as they will continue eating their meals. And so that's my judge, is if they're eating what I think a decent portion is for their size and needs, and they're still hungry, it's probably because they're growing, and I go ahead and feed them. You can also do the egg test. And so I'll just like boil a bunch of eggs and have a bunch of hard-boiled eggs in the fridge. And so if they're hungry enough to just grab a hard-boiled egg and eat that, then that's fine. You can go ahead and have a hard-boiled egg. That's fine. But if they're picky and they want carbs or even fruit, which is really sugar heavy, I do limit that. And then my last exception is I do let them have popsicles. Popsicles are a fun thing to make. They cool down in the winter, and like the amount of stuff that's in popsicle molds. So we make a lot of different homemade popsicles. Right now I'm making keto popsicles because we're on keto. The amount of, it's like a 1/4 cup of pureed liquid. And so I let them have a popsicle in the afternoon after they've been playing outside. And so that's my other exception. If after this you're considering giving no snacks a try, it's something I definitely recommend. It's just kind of like you can train yourself to go to sleep early and get up early. You can train your kids' hunger hormones. And so just go slowly, space out the snacks, or like start with 3 solid meals and then space out what you have been doing. Really just having that limit around food kind of frees them up to both experience boredom, because food isn't there to distract them. And that's something that's super important for kids to learn, that it's okay to be bored. It doesn't mean that you need to go eat or you need to go get into trouble. it's okay to sit with your boredom and maybe think of something constructive to do. And also for their blood sugar to adjust and their hormones to adjust. And so that as parents, this is something that I think you will find is super beneficial. It does take a little bit to kind of get your kids in the habit of it and to make this transition. So don't think it's going to happen overnight with no fussing. But once you get there, like my kids are 12, 10, and 5, and they don't expect snacks, and you have no idea how freeing that is for me. I will see you back soon. We're going to talk about chores and some other things with kids too this summer. But I will see you back soon. If you'd like more information, go ahead and click on the link over there. And I have a written blog post and I have more videos on this as well. I will see you back soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.